I'd like to call our meeting to order tonight. Welcome, everybody. We will have an opportunity for public comment here in a moment. But I'd like to start off our meeting with a question for those of the board that are assembled and give the time for some of those who aren't here to make it here. So I've been working in my garden, and I'm wondering, if you have a garden, what is the most important thing for you to have in your garden? So that's our starter question for tonight. Anybody want to start us?
Anti-deer spray.
Anti-deer spray? Do you have a garden?
I yard stuff, but I planted fruit trees last year, and I was so proud of my apples till I found the deer had jumped over the shrubs, through the dogs, and were down eating my apples. So now I spray around the perimeter just to keep the deer out. They can have my blueberry bushes, that's it for them. That's fine, but not the deer.
Okay. Rick, do you have a garden?
Yes, since I retired, my wife turned over the vegetable part of the garden to me, and I added one. So I have 3 raised vegetable beds, and I too, last year didn't have proper anti-deer, but this year I think I've got them, at least so far they haven't gotten to them. I've got tomato towers, only instead of using that little next tower, I have a fence around each vegetable garden, and it's covered by not wire, but netting, and they haven't touched it.
All right. Walt, do you have a garden?
I have a garden of sorts. I have flowers. My late wife Nancy was a flower person, and so I've tried to do my best to maintain our flowers and put in annuals every year. But I've learned one of the reasons we had such good flowers is she was very faithful about deadheading the things. And I find I have neither the time nor the patience to deadhead, so mine just kind of do their best to hang on during the summer. My wife would hang a phone on her ear and walk around and talk on the phone and deadhead, but I've not mastered that. So some years my flowers do great. Some years, like this year, they're not so good.
I have a garden. I grew up on a farm in Minnesota, and so it allows me to kind of get my little farmer gene going there for a little bit. But tomatoes are definitely my favorite out of the garden. I always taste the difference between a fresh tomato and one I buy at the store.
Well, I don't have a garden. I think the only thing I grow is my lawn. So that's easy. A little water and mow it once in a while.
All right. Tom?
Could you repeat the question I didn't at the beginning?
Do you have a garden? And
Yes.
what is your favorite thing you grow in your garden?
Cucumbers.
Why cucumbers?
I like to make pickles.
Oh, very good. Welcome, Bill.
Sorry,
Bill, the question is, do you have a garden?
Do I have a garden?
Yep.
I have a 13-acre martini ranch. I grow martinis and I drink them.
All right. All right. Well, thank you. Mike, you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, I'll jump in. We have a garden, mostly my wife. She does the flowers and she does a lot of the vegetable stuff. I grow strawberries. So I have little strawberry, little buckets. So there's 3 of them on the front deck and 3 on the back deck. And so I get enough strawberries every other day to put on my cereal.
Just the right amount.
Brian, how about you?
I do not have a garden. My wife has a garden, and my job is to stay as far away from my wife and her garden as possible on the weekends.
All right. As you'll see, we have a very full agenda tonight. We'll maintain our 3-hour rule for how long we'll go. We'll cut it at 3 hours. To start us off, though, approval of minutes from our last meeting. Can I have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All those in any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, minutes have been approved. Could I have the sheet?
One point of order.
Yes.
You have the signature folder on your plate tonight.
All right.
So my payroll approval and the minutes are in there for you to distribute. And also the
Voucher.
blanket voucher
Okay.
is also in there for signature when we get to that point.
Do we have the sign-up sheet or the individuals who'd like to make public comment? For those of you who have come and would like to make public comment, we welcome your comments. I'll say the same thing as last time, that the more public comments we have, the less time we have to get to the very business that most of the public comments would like us to get to. So as brief as you can keep your comments, please do, and we'll keep you at a 3-minute limit. The first person I'd like to invite up is Connie Weisel and Scott Shoemaker. Did I pronounce your last name correctly, Connie?
Weisel, yes.
Weisel, thank you.
Do you want us just to stand here?
Let's ask, is that fine? Yeah, very good.
Okay. Well, I'm Connie Weisel. I represent the Silverdale Chamber through the Government Affairs Committee. And I have asked for Scott to come and speak briefly on our support of the CK School District. I would first of all ask for a show of hands of those people who are on the Government Affairs Committee and part of our, thank you for coming. And I'm going to turn the time over to Scott Shoemaker. He is going to be our spokesman.
Hi, my name is Scott Shoemaker. I just wanted to first say thank you for allowing us to address you today. And as she said, we're here on behalf of the Government Affairs Committee, speaking on behalf of local business in Kitsap County. And so our message today is please take a close look at the CK Schools District proposal in completing the Athletic Center, Music Facility, and Outdoor Amphitheater. Had an opportunity to look at these projects, and I think that they're going to provide significant economic impact and benefit to the county, and I think it's going to be consistent with the district's 4 main goals. And so, as briefly as I can, I'll go through how these projects relate to those goals. So, for economic development, I think our community needs them. These projects will help countywide local businesses prosper. We know Silverdale is the economic hub of Kitsap County, and I think these projects will create gathering places. And we know that gathering places generate a sense of community, support local business, and ultimately help clarify Silverdale and Old Town's identity. I think they'll attract outside visitors who will spend money here, but I don't, as a fairly recent former visitor myself, I can honestly say that you don't just come to one town in Kitsap County, you oftentimes venture out and visit the communities surrounding. I think that's a special thing about this county, and I think when you bring visitors in this county, it affects everybody. And so, similar to the chamber statement of people will visit, stay, play, eat, and shop. Regarding the second, efficient use of public and private monies, I think that really comes down to, as far as these projects are concerned, a viable return on investment. And how does that go? Well, I think price. I think this project is not as expensive as some other projects going on there when you compare them, to the total available funding. And I think these projects will create more tax dollars for Kitsap County. I think you're going to have increased patronage. And you never know. It might help open the door to possibly a new hotel. And we know that hotels bring very good contributions of tax revenue. And we think that these facilities might bring enough visitors in here to open that door. And I think in that situation, rising tides lift all boats. And I think that, those tax dollars can be spent developing other projects as well. I think that it's an investment in a growing capability to fund other projects. Finally, as far as efficient use of public and private monies, this project's ready to go. They're engineered, shovel ready, and they'll be put to immediate use. And I don't know if anybody's had a chance to visit the new schools, but I think that they'll show you that they'll be completed and produce results.
Thank you, Scott. Next up is Mary Earl from Clear Creek Trail. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you very much.
I'm Mary Earl, I'm with the Clear Creek Trail, and I would just like to reiterate what Scott said, in that Silverdale brings in the most lodging tax next to Bremerton, and it would behoove the whole county if we had the project here in Kitsap County in Silverdale. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mike Menifee. Is it?
Well done.
Yeah.
First
All
try.
right. West Sound Chorus. Welcome.
Thank you. I liked your talking about gardens, and I guess if our community's a garden, then the arts and music are the sunshine for that garden. It's hard to put a dollar on that, but we all know that, right? I direct the West Sound Chorus, have so for more than 20 years, and I know that my organization and others like us struggle to find good rehearsal space. And while you may be saying, well, how do we deal with that from a monetary standpoint? I would say that one of the things that we do is bring the music back to, for instance, the elderly in our community and the most fragile people. And those rehearsal spaces are so precious. Now we hunt from place to place, the Grange or a church, and we haul our materials in and out every week. What a gift it would be to your community to have choirs, bands, have a real fantastic first-class rehearsal space that's already sitting up there just waiting for you to say yes. So I hope you'll bring a little more sunshine to our community, and I thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mike. Next up is Howard Julian, Collective
I
Visions
signed up for that
Gallery.
in error. I believe we were on an actual agenda item.
Okay, thank you. Brian Nilsson, CNW. Welcome back, Brian.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I want to give a private update on the private side of the project real quick. We have 3 global management firms that will be conducting site visits in mid-July. And then we're going to be hiring, we have it narrowed down to 2 PR firms that will also visit the site before we make a selection. We've opened up a escrow account with Columbia Bank. That was done this week. We also have contracted with a website, social media and branding company. So we'll be available on over 20 platforms. We have an updated list of 150 founding members. We had a founder event held 2 weeks ago. It was 96, now it's over 150, so we're getting very good response there. We'll be ready to go August 1st with the first phase of the founding membership drive. Our phase 2 master plan is being represented as public-private, which still remains our plan. We feel, CNW feels a public obligation since we're on port land for our use, and with the port as a public partner. We already have clients in place now, and we want to continue that use and increase it. It'll allow us to train first responders, hold national, regional, and local events, and give us the ability to involve schools and post-secondary education with STEM training opportunities, as well as provide the large-scale economic development that we've talked about before. We will benefit federal, state, and county governments with jobs, tax revenue, while exceeding the criteria set forth by the PFD. I have a few people here I'd like to introduce. We have Rob Barnes, Legislative Assistant for Representative McEwen. Arna Bacher, Director of Business Development with Port of Bremerton. And I hope I pronounced your name right, Michael Labadie.
Yep, that's close
with Bangor, Naval Base Kitsap. So yeah, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Brian, when you first started off, you had 3 firms getting ready to come in,
Right.
and I didn't get what they were doing. What kind of
managing the entire property?
Okay, management.
Yeah, management company.
All right, thank you.
You got it.
Now Rob Barnes from the Washington State Legislature. Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Rob Barnes. I'm the Legislative Assistant to Representative Drew McEwen, who's here obviously in the 35th District along with Dan Grippy and Senator Tim Sheldon. And I just wanted to, we've had several meetings with Brian in group, and we are in full support I'll speak on behalf of Representative McEwen, not just from a facility standpoint that we can offer this, entertainment venue, but more importantly, the education. I'm a lifelong resident of Shelton, and where we're a bedroom community, and to see this, the opportunity for kids to be able to be educated and be trained to move into other work environments is strategically important, and so we're in full support. We've offered all the assistance that we can from a legislative standpoint, and we will continue, obviously, as it moves forward. We'll work with, every, parties from Kitsap County, Brian, but we just want to let you know from a legislative standpoint, we're certainly in support of this, what we consider a really well thought out process. I've been able to go through the, entire 185 pages of, documents and spent the last couple of months looking through the detail, and we're very pleased with what we've seen so far. So just wanted to acknowledge it on behalf of Representative McEwen. We're definitely in support of it.
Thank you, Rob. Next up is Arna Baker from the Port of Bremerton.
Thank you for having me. My name is Arna Baker. I'm Business Development Director of the Port of Bremerton. I'm here also to support with Brian for Circuits of the Northwest. Port feels that this could be an incredible economic impact for the entire county, as well as obviously the educational factor. We have been in contact already with a nationally acclaimed technical institute that wants to help us write the curriculum for these students to be able to continue their secondary education, keep them local, and be able to supply a good workforce for the companies that we have in our area. The other aspect, obviously, there's a tourism factor involved that's going to bring a lot of people to Kitsap County, and the ancillary businesses that will come to Kitsap County because of this road course and project with Circuits of the Northwest. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Michael, is it Labodi or Labada? Labady, thank you.
Yeah, and with me will be my counterpart, Deputy Chief Jeffrey Holcomb. So we're here to represent Naval Base Kitsap, Bremerton, and Bangor Police Department. Currently, we have over 619 personnel assigned to that organization. I'm the Deputy Chief of Training. Deputy Chief Holcomb's the Deputy Chief of Police Operations. Recently, probably in the last 90 days, we were able to begin conducting emergency vehicle operation training at the Bremerton Raceway. And I'm here to tell you, based on experience, that is a tremendously and vastly important skill set for our officers and our military police. There's nowhere else in the region that we can send that to them for that training. Our sailors who come out of their initial military police school don't get this training at their police course. I did submit a letter to the board to make this consideration, and I'll defer the rest of my time to Deputy Chief Holcomb. There's one thing I would ask, is that every day people in my position, our position, are forced to tell our law enforcement personnel to do more with less, and I'm asking this board to consider not to put us in that position because it happens all over the region. And I'll defer the rest of the time to Deputy Chief.
Yeah, my name's Jeff Holcomb. I'm Mike's counterpart. I run operations division. Most people don't realize that Naval Base Kitsap polices about 42,000 people on a daily basis over 7 individual bases, including one small one on the other side of the canal. We have 2 very large precincts. We're the 4th largest agency in the state of Washington. We do integrated training with Bremerton County, a little bit of State Patrol, and Port Orford PD at this raceway for our emergency vehicle response. Losing this asset not only would be financially impactful for our agency, I mean, even though the Navy's got big pockets, it's still, we get a little bit of that. We'd be forced to go to Shelton and wait in line at Washington State Patrol's facility, and a great facility, but we go to the bottom of that list. Having this training local, being able to operate with Bremerton specifically as our counterparts is huge. So we're just asking, the port to consider that this is such a huge asset for us being local right here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up is Karen Leaf, the EDC of Mason County.
Yeah, thanks for saying my name right. It's usually Karen, so I appreciate that. My name is Karen. I'm the Business Outreach Manager for the Economic Development Council of Mason County. Our last visit here after Tracy Schmidt spoke at your last board meeting, the ridge was referred to as a club track. I found it interesting. There didn't seem to be a good understanding of what the Ridge Motorsports Park is and what it already brings to the region, so I wanted to help clear up that misconception. The Ridge is a privately funded national caliber motorsports complex. With its national caliber road course, it offers a sought-after course from a local level to a national level that is right here next to the facility CNW is proposing. The facility will be hosting a very well-known televised national event in 2020, and other national sanctioning bodies in discussion with the facility right now. This facility began 7 years ago with the intent on being an avid supporter of the community and offering a place for the surrounding area to experience motorsports at a national level. The Ridge road course is 2.47 miles long with 16 turns and over 300 feet of elevation gain and loss per lap, including a 50-foot plunge. The Ridge MX track, the motocross, is a 0.9 mile long outdoor circuit with over 13 different corners ranging from supercross style bowl corners with split lane options to fast sweepers and dogleg corners. The Ridge Grand Prix is a 5th scale version of the road course with all of the same features. The Ridge Off-Road Park caters to wanting to test the dynamics of 4x4s, SUVs, ARBs off-road, where creating a key course to test suspension components is crucial for testing. The Ridge Skid Pad offers a dynamic opportunity for autocross, drifting, car control training, and many other vehicle dynamic functions. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I've got some printouts for all of you if I can pass those out.
So I have a question. You said you're privately funded. Who owns the property you operate on?
PMMI, and Tracy, the general manager, can touch more on that.
Joe Mankey and Rusty Gill.
Pardon me?
Joe Mankey and Rusty Gill own the property.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I don't know why I always get so nervous publicly speaking.
It's hard. I
Huh?
can relate to that.
There you are. Thank you. What's that?
Never get used to it.
Jennifer Berea, the EDC of Mason County as well. How did I do on Berea?
Well, you
Say-
got Jennifer right.
Yeah, right.
Barry is last
My
name.
apologies.
It happens all the time, so no worries. Again, I'm Jennifer Berry. I'm the Executive Director of the Mason County Economic Development Council. And really, we came up here because of the confusion that happened at the last meeting around what it is that our road course is down there. And as I looked through the proposal that's online for the racetrack that's proposed here, you know, it's a great idea. It's so great, in fact, we've already done it in Shelton 7 years ago. And it is a longer, more dynamic course than what is proposed in yours. We do facilitate emergency vehicle training. We have STEM programs that are already being developed out there. They have just are nearing completion on their new event center. They are moving forward with the track that you guys are just now trying to get started. So I appreciate the enthusiasm that you have for this project, and we invite you to come down and really experience the track that is 30 minutes from your proposed site. Really get an idea of what is already here in the region that other entities can utilize. Our emergency vehicles down in that area use that as well, and I've got some good contacts now to reach out to other facilities that can utilize this. As I read through the proposal, there were a few concerns that I had around the STEM program and the manufacturing program. There's been a lot of push on the benefits that they would bring, and I'm concerned as to the prioritization between building the road course, the actual surfaces, and building those projects and those programs to it. There's no real delineation on the priorities around that. If STEM and manufacturing are the priority, then how are those funds being allocated toward the actual development of your road course? How are you going to really compete in those two avenues? And I didn't notice any in the budgetary outline, the development costs. Where's the startup capital for actual operations? There is close to $1.5 million of equipment that you need to, from the start, to operate the facility. You know, loader, dozer, skid steer, tractor, all of those go into that. There really was no information surrounding that. And It was touched on a little bit, but a few confusing issues around where your private funding dollars are coming from. Have they already been submitted? Have they been identified? I just couldn't find any information on that. So I appreciate your time. Thank you for listening, and please feel free to come down. It's not that far, and we'll have all of the fast cars there. You're welcome to not drive them, but be driven in them.
Thank you, Jennifer. Tracy Schmidt, Ridge Motorsports Park.
Hi. So my name is Tracy Schmidt. I'm the general manager of the Ridge Motorsports Park, a national track holding national events that are televised and highly rated networks. I was general manager of Pacific Raceways for 8 years, in which I still have a relationship and talk with the owner, Jason Ferrito. I have also consulted for and worked with other national multi-surface facilities, including Heartland Park, Topeka, and Vegas. I have worked with, on a national level, the National Hot Rod Association as well. I have a vast understanding of what a club track, member track, and national track consists of, and have a diverse background in all facets of motorsports, both from a local level and a national level. I give you this background for you to understand that I have a very diverse understanding of the economic impact that a motorsports facility has on a community. As being involved in numerous privately funded facilities, I know firsthand the economic impact that these facilities provide from an education, manufacturing, and community standpoint. After reading the proposal for CNW, I was a little confused on some of the approaches on the way the proposal was outlined. Firstly, I saw 50% of the incoming revenue is based on membership dues. After speaking with Jason Ferrito with Pacific Raceways, PR has already approached this business model along with doing an extensive market analysis to see if the business model is even viable. At this moment, the conclusion is they are not comfortable with this being a successful business model. I would also like to point out that if any facility is going to be successful with this approach, it would be Seattle. They're located in a metropolitan area, right in that group of clientele that they're trying to approach. If that's the case, and that's not a viable business option, what's CNW's plan to replace this revenue stream? Because that's a huge margin of what they're proposing. Secondly, I wanted to ask how CNW came up with the proposed economic impact numbers. And the reason why I'm asking is the last economic impact study that Portland International Raceway conducted, which are pretty comparable facilities, both to the Ridge, both to Seattle, and both to what CNW is trying to propose as well. They had a total economic activity of $45.3 million in output. These numbers were based on 650 days of events for the year. I want to point out that PIR is located in a metropolitan area where Portland can support these large national events where the majority of these funds remain in the market. CNW is proposing only 189 rental days for the first year with an increase of up to 377 for year 5. If CNW were to hold mid-size events of 30,000 people, and I just want to also clarify that today's standards for motorsports, I'm in track operation meetings with other national facilities. 30,000 fans now is considered, that's a good large number for us. So motorsports in certain segments are not as alive and thriving as sometimes paperwork on our desk proposes that it is. So my question is where are all these people staying, eating, and accessing entertainment to keep all these funds within your local market, especially since it's public funds that are proposed to build this facility?
Thank you, Tracy.
Okay.
Gail Danner, Central Kitsap School District.
Good evening. I wanted to speak in favor of the CK Event Center. I am dressed in my moving clothes because today was a pack and move day for Central Kitsap High School. And as I looked over toward the 900 wing and I realized that the economic opportunity that is there and ready to go, I just felt compelled that I had to come down and say a few words in support of the opportunity that presents itself in front of us. Number one, because the space is there and the investment has already begun, I really feel like if we are going to leverage and maximize our public dollars, then to already have a project that is already supported and started by just infusing an additional amount of funds to be able to make what is already a beautiful campus be a 24/7, 365 kind of environment for our community is really something that I think we could all get behind and be very passionate about. In terms of the 6 hours a day that students are there, or even 8 if you count the after-school activities, the opportunity is right for weekends and evenings, for community events, for chorus rehearsals, for sporting events in the stadiums and all of that, with a commitment to the public funds, from the public funding district, to get these things underway. I think that our return on our investment as public employees and public officials, we are committed to making best use of public dollars and leveraging and maximizing the funds that are already being employed. I think is just a super smart, efficient way of bringing additional economic development to our area, plus providing a state-of-the-art opportunity for arts, education, sporting events, and community building in the center of our county. And I would really like to speak in support of that. Thank you.
Gail, thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. We're going to move on now to number 4 on our agenda, the event fund presentation. Mike, would you introduce Howard Julian and tell the board whatever information you want to give?
Okay. Yeah, this is Howard Julian, and
Alan Newberg.
Yes, Alan Newberg from the Collective Visions Gallery, and they do an event every year, and most recently at the conference center, and they want to explain to you why they would like to get some money from us to help promote and market their event.
We put on an annual art show, a statewide jury. Oh, excuse me.
Howard, one moment. I know that Mike had promised 10 minutes to you, and so just to know that you've got 10 minutes, but I'm going to cut you off at that point, just because of how many things we're trying to get through tonight.
Thank you. Okay, so Alan and I are part of Collective Visions Gallery in Bremerton. We put on an annual statewide jury to art show in February, end of January through February. We attract artists from all over the state. The first weekend of the show, we put on an event at the Kitsap Conference Center, our opening ceremony event. And we'd like to expand this into a full weekend event. We have artists from all over the state come in, and or some of them come in. We'd like to get more of them to come in and to have kind of a weekend event. So we're asking for a $2,000 grant from the event fund to help us fund advertising and outreach, additional outreach to these people to try to get better attendance. Alan, you want to talk about the event?
So the event itself is called the CVG Show, and as Howard has said, it's a statewide juried art exhibition for professional artists from all across the state, and we get great participation. This will be our 13th year. We've been doing it for 12 years. This will be our 3rd year to do it in the Kitsap Convention Center. We had to move there because we outgrew the Admiral Theater. They didn't have enough space. And so it's very good. It's just it's within walking distance of the gallery, so that works very well. What we're part of what we're thinking, the show itself is one of the largest juried art shows of its type in the state or even in the region, based on a number of ways of evaluating that. One way is how many artists actually enter it. So more artists enter this show than most any other juried show, and partly they do it because it's a better show than the rest of it. So we raise sponsors. Through sponsors, we raise prize money, purchase prize and cash prize money for over $11,000 cash prize. Most of our competing exhibit competitions, there's quite a few in the state, their total purse is half that or less. So that's kind of what happens. So anyway, this is a community event. The exhibition is up for 5 weeks, and it's open to the public, and the public's also many of them participate in on the opening night ceremonies. So we're adding the idea of having more events along with the awards ceremony throughout. That would include movies, art-related movies, either movies about artists or movies that are pieces of art themselves. So that's basically our day, and perhaps some music events as well. So the request is modest, $2,000 for outreach. And do you have anything else, Dan?
No, we received funding last year from the city of Bremerton. Was the first time we actually, in recent years, have reached out for grant money. We've been strictly relying on sponsors, but we'd like to expand this because we think we make a significant economic impact to the community. We bring in lots of people, we bring in lots of money, and the event we have at the conference center is a big event. We'd like to make it bigger. And the way we can make it bigger is having more people attend.
You know, you have an overnight hotel package?
We are putting that together.
Are you working with more than one hotel?
Yes, we're working with the 3 different hotels in the downtown Bremerton area.
You said this was your 3rd year at the conference center?
Yes.
And I'm not an art guy, what's a juried art show? Does that mean you have a jury that picks the winners?
So what it means is that it means we have 2 PR problems to deal with. First of all, we have to get PR out to the artists to encourage them to enter the show. So they pay to enter the show. And that's one of our main streams of income is the entry fee. So the artists pay to enter the show in order to be eligible to compete. And so we use an online jury entry system. It's called Cafe, Call for Art Entries. And that's a service that's offered by a firm in an arts support firm that's in Denver, actually. But so then we get the artist to enter, and then we hire a professional juror, or sometimes more than one juror, because this is an all-media show. And the juror selects from all of the entries. They select the pieces that will actually be shown in the gallery and will be eligible for the prize money. So we go from around 1,000 pieces of art that are entered. The jurors have to cut that down to about 130 pieces of art. So it's a pretty competitive show. The juror last year was Gary Fagan. He's juried lots of these shows. He says this is the most competitive show in the state, which means we get the best quality art. The more competitive it is, the better art you get. This is the way it works. And so then they compete, and so they get in. First of all, it's hard to even get in. Only about 1 in every 6 artists who enter actually get in. And then there's about 12 major prizes. A first place, there's the Mayor's Award for the Best of Show, which is a $1,500 award. Then there's a best of each category. There's 3 big categories. There's photo digital art, and then there's 2-dimensional art, and there's 3-dimensional art. So virtually everything in the way of physical art sort of falls in one of those 3 categories. And that's the way it works. And there's a first, second, and third prize in each of those. Then there's a few honorable mentions. Then in addition to that, we have some entities that sponsor purchase prizes. So any business or any person can sponsor a business prize. They simply pledge ahead of time that they're going to spend a given amount of dollars on purchasing a piece of art that has been juried into the show. So they can then go in and pick that out, the piece of art they want, from all this work that's been juried by professional jurors.
Who will you target with the 2,000 and how will you target them?
Well, mostly that's going to be targeted towards the people who are entrants into the show to get additional attendance at the the event. I mean, we will be putting together, you know, hotel packages and other things like film showings, and you know, we're in the planning stages of that right now. Actually, we're working towards getting to the planning stages for that, but we'd like to put together a full weekend. So, and then they're also going to be targeting advertising towards art people, you know, art enthusiasts.
Art enthusiasts, art collectors.
And we're looking mostly to target, you know, Seattle, Everett, Tacoma area. You know, if we're coming up with more buyers, you know, they're not Kitsap County people. They're people from out of the area.
Thank you, Howard.
Historically, what's the attendance been?
Well, the attendance at the opening event last time was about 300 people. Over the course of the show, which runs for a month,
12 to 1500.
Yeah.
And is there a fee for people, the enthusiasts who want to come and peruse the art?
There's no fee to view the show.
There's a fee to participate as an artist.
So there's a fee to enter and participate, but there's no fee to view the show. There is a fee for guests. Every artist that is accepted into the show gets a free ticket to attend the banquet. And then if that person has guests, there's a fee for their guests to cover the food.
So how much of this takes place in the convention center? The whole thing, or?
No, really only the ceremony part. The Collective Visions Gallery is a gallery, and we're able to present a museum quality show with museum lighting, and you know, it's what we would call a curated exhibition. So the way things are displayed is very carefully worked out. So there's a lot of time that goes into, you know, what's the best way to display the art to the best advantage of the art, so that people will be able to get engaged with the art and maybe purchase it.
So one day basically at the convention
it's one day at the convention, at the conference center.
One day at the conference center, but the exhibition is 5 weeks.
All of we have no paid staff. We're all volunteers who work, whether we're gallery members or other members of the community who are interested in participating and helping out in the show. So, you know, we don't have, essentially our overhead is close to zero, other than what, you know, what we're paying out for the facilities.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Diane.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Mike, are we taking a vote on this tonight?
Pardon?
Was it your intention that we would take a vote on this tonight, whether we wish to?
We typically do. Whether we do it now, we frequently waited until the time that we do our financials, and then it can come up at that time.
Okay. For those of you who are here for other purposes, the event fund, what we use that for is for marketing the facilities that we have funded in the past. So especially for different organizations or events who are trying something for the first time or the second time. So we try and give money to them for marketing purposes to make those events successful. So if you know of any events that you would like to sponsor at any of the convention center or at the fairground or at the North Kitsap Facilities District, or these future partners that we hope to partner with, this is money that we have every year as part of our budget that helps these events to get off the ground and get started. All right, let's move forward then to the financial reports. Number 5, monthly financial and tax reports for May, and the blanket vouchers. Mike, is there anything that you want to speak to these, or?
Yeah, I'll mention that in your packets are the documents that you usually see. The revenue for this period was $150,400 and change. The nice thing is that was up 3.8% over the same time last year. Now, as you remember, I commented on a couple of months in a row where we were negative, or 3 out of 4 months, so I was concerned about the trend. This may still be going up and down, doing a little bit of yo-yoing, but at least this month was up, and at $150,000, that was a very substantial month. And remember, this actually goes back to the month of March, when those expenditures happened to yield that sales tax. The debt service, as usual, is $70,000 per month, leaving the net as $80,000 over and above the debt service. Our expenses were at $14,200, so it left a net of $66,200 that were net to cash in the 977 general account. Any questions on any of that?
So that puts us over 2.6 million in the
Correct.
bank, so to speak. Remind me again, what we have against that is obligations down the line against the 2.6.
The only thing that we have at this point, there are two things. One that is kind of long-standing, a promise or at least a commitment to the Parks Department of $500,000 toward resurfacing the main baseball field with artificial turf. They're in the process of collecting grants and other monies, so they have not come back to us yet and said, we have the package together and we need X from the Public Facilities District. It may be something more than that $500,000, but we pledged to at least that much. So there's no further word on that yet. The other, of course, is the $500,000, $502,000 that we committed to the phase 2 of the C&W project for the architectural and engineering drawings. And you have a packet of information in one of the manila folders that of the 3 folders that you received, that has status reports from the last 3 months on what that money is going to when we approve a blanket voucher request from the port. That pays for that activity.
Have we paid for any of that as yet?
Yes, we have. There have been 3 blanket vouchers that we have processed for the Port of Bremerton, all roughly in the neighborhood of $70,000. So there's been about $200,000 expended so far.
The artificial turf, I always thought that was soccer fields. You said baseball?
The Gordon Field is the soccer field, yeah, but they've got the baseball field where the Blue Jackets used to play, which is their main stadium baseball field. Rick can tell you about that. Anyway, they want to put artificial turf on that field, which would be about $1.5 to $2 million project. It would then marry up better with the 2 fields that were reconstructed by the Central Kitsap School District when they did their bond work. What are called fields 2 and 3, the ones that are closest to Olympic High School, have already been redone, and they've got 2 beautiful fields there. Now, the Parks Department wants to do the same treatment on the main field where the stadium is, which is called Field 1.
So it is just baseball.
Yeah.
It's just me remembering soccer and not.
At one time, they talked about either doing a second Gordon Field in turf or the baseball field, and I said, pick one, you know, we can't do both. So they picked doing Lobe Field number 1.
Yeah.
Mike, for the voucher, the blanket voucher approval, there's a $1,000 item for Northwest Athletics for the NKSD advertising, and
Yes.
Burley Events Group for the event fund for $5,000. Can
Yeah.
you just give me the background on both of
Sure.
those?
The Burley Events Group is the June bug fair that they switched from Burley and Olalla to the fairgrounds. And last year they asked for the $5,000. They held their event in June of this year with the additional advertising and promotion money that we garnered for them. There is a report from that fair along with the information there. And this is the invoice that they gave us after the fact, after they.
So we previously approved this.
Correct. Oh, yeah. No, it had been approved in January. And this is just now getting the invoice to pay off the commitment we made in January.
So on the financials, when it shows nothing paid year to date, it's because it's not calculating these guys in there yet, right?
Right.
These numbers effective.
Yeah. The other $1,000 is a commitment that I've done a couple of times in the past to the Northwest Athletics is an advertising agency that works on behalf of the North Kitsap School District, and they put out 3 booklets. It's really like a program. Features all of the athletic teams in North Kitsap and the sponsors, and there's ads and so on. Because the ad highlights the event fund grants as part of the message in that ad, I felt that it was important not only to maintain a presence in North Kitsap, even though we weren't actively involved in that project right now. I wanted them to know that the PFD was still in support of the school districts and its activities, and that we were willing to support the athletic teams that were playing on our fields.
All right, thank you. So at this point, we should add in our discussion and decision on the opening night reception, correct?
Yes, you can add that.
Do we need to vote on the voucher?
Blanket voucher?
Yeah. Vote on
Take
the
a motion
blanket
for the voucher?
first, yeah.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right. Voucher is passed. Now to the new event fund before us from Collective Vision Gallery for the opening night reception show. Can I have a motion for that?
I move to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
And now any discussion on that?
Well, I was disinclined to vote for this because they've come to us for, I forget how many years, 10 years, 12 years or something, and that's sort of outside the scope of what we hope to achieve to get events off the ground. However, since it's only the 3rd year at the conference center, I guess we can help them out a little bit longer. So,
okay.
Was that a second? Who seconded?
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay, sorry, Pat.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those, any opposed say nay. Looks like we have more sunshine. That's good. Okay, on to number 6. Why don't, this is I think, going to take a few minutes of our time tonight, and so I'd like to pause the meeting for just 5 minutes, let everybody stretch their legs, get a drink, whatever you want.
Practice,
So
I think amongst the financial organizations is that when one entity is presenting, the other entities step outside. Is that been common practice? So that 5-minute break will allow
all right,
the others
very
to
good, and we'll start with
first.
Foster Pepper. Thank you. Tonight we have the opportunity to hear from both different entities, individuals who are interested in representing us as our bond counsel and our financial advisor, to give a word of how this fits into our whole project and the proposals that we are receiving. I've asked Brian if he would just give an overview statement of how these different entities will, what they will do for us and how they fit into the big picture.
Great, thank you, Darren. So to recap, just briefly for the board and for the audience who may not have been involved in public finance before, when the PFD was authorized to raise additional money and possibly devote it to new centers, it created the opportunity for the PFD to go to the capital markets to raise money through bonding. That was something that would be new to the PFD. When the PFD was formed in the early 2000s, Kitsap County actually stepped in and issued the bonds on the PFD's behalf. So kind of a new process for the county, new process for the PFD, and part of that process has been putting together a team that's required to do public finance. And the team members typically include a financial advisor who acts sort of like a quarterback or something, but looks at the big picture, advises the board on strategies and options and so on. Then there's underwriters, people who actually issue the bonds, and we've talked to a couple of those folks before. And then there's an important cog called the Bond Council, which is the legal support to go to the public finance markets. The Bond Council has to kind of drill down deep on all the legal nuances and issues that are implicit in going out to get public financing. So hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. With that, we'd like to welcome Mark Greenow.
It's simpler than it
looks. Very good. To present to us tonight. Thank you.
Great. You got me just over here? Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for having us. My name is Mark Greenow. I'm with the Seattle law firm of Foster Pepper. And I know you have our proposal, so I don't want to go over exactly what's in the proposal. But just touch on some highlights and then leave some time for you all to have questions. Foster Pepper is one of the oldest firms in Seattle. It's been around for 115 years. And we have the largest bond counsel practice. So we do more public finance, legal work in Washington than any other firm. We represent the state of Washington on all of its borrowings and the state treasurer's office. We're very, very active with public facilities districts, with PFDs across the state. So I have worked with, I think, 8 or 10 of them on various projects, and my predecessor, Hugh Spitzer, also worked with many of them. And Hugh has retired from our firm now, but he's still teaching at the University of Washington, and he was actually my law school professor 25 years ago. So we've had a long involvement with PFDs. We're very active in the association. I think we've attended every annual conference of the association. That's where Mr. Walton and I every once in a while get to chat about the projects that you have, which are very exciting and we would love to work on. My colleague Nancy Naris actually represented Kitsap County when they financed, when they did the first bond issue for the PFD, so we're very well aware of your finances and we understand your operations. The Bond Council basically has 3 roles. So there's state law. There are lots of state laws that govern how you can borrow money because the farmers back in 1889 when they wrote the Constitution did not want local governments getting in debt and then not being able to repay it. So every I has to be dotted and every T has to be crossed. That's the main part of what we do. And we try and do that alone in our offices so that we don't drive you crazy, because it's a little bit obsessive compulsive when it comes down to what does the statute actually say, and I think your legal counsel can second that. So these statutes are complicated and they're not easy to understand. The second is if you decide to issue public bonds on your own and get a rating and offer them to the public, then there's all kinds of securities laws that attach. So there's federal securities laws and state securities laws, and you're required to provide full and fair disclosure of your finances and operations. And we will assist you in developing your disclosure document. If you just decide to borrow from a bank, then that will be a much lesser rule. But getting that offering document, that prospectus in shape for investors is a significant part of the process. And then finally, there's federal tax requirements if you borrow on a tax exempt basis. And for PFDs, this is very, very important because you almost always have private sector entities using your space, or you have a management contract to operate the space with a private sector entity. And the federal tax regulations that govern that are extremely complicated. And fortunately, my partner Bill Tompkin has been doing this for 40 years. He's the state of Washington's bond counsel. He's done this longer than anybody in the state. And every once in a while, you'll just get a random call from the IRS. It happens, and when that happens, you definitely want Bill by your side because the IRS staff know him. He will work out all the spreadsheets and the diligence necessary to support the tax exemption of your bonds. We're very comfortable with interlocal arrangements. I know that you'll be partnering with lots of different entities. We represent some of those entities in different capacities, usually as bond counsel, but it's very typical for us on a PFD financing to work with a county PFD, a city PFD, a county, a city, everybody that's putting money into the package and working on those arrangements. And then finally, one thing that was not in our proposal is since we submitted it, we have decided to combine forces with another Seattle firm named Garvey, Schubert, and Bear. They're about the same size as we are. They also do a lot of work for public sector clients. So by September 1st, we'll be Foster Garvey. We'll be twice as large, and we'll be doubling down on our commitment to the Pacific Northwest.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? All right, thank you very much.
Well, it would be a great pleasure for us to work with you, and we appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
You're up.
Okay. Hi there, my name is Dan Gottlieb. I'm a principal with Hillis, Clark, Martin, and Peterson in Seattle, but I'm a Kitsap resident here, 30-year resident of Bainbridge Island. I don't have any prepared remarks for you, although I hope you have a copy of the letter of qualifications that we sent to Brian. And I'll just give you a quick introduction, and then if you have any questions of me, I'll let you do that. I've been a bond lawyer for the last 40 years, worked on a wide variety of transactions, including a number of transactions in and around public facilities districts, not for any district that has actually issued any bonds, or I haven't worked on the bonds they've issued, but I helped with the conference center with the city of Bremerton's bonds that built a parking garage. And that had some very complicated tax issues because there is what's called private use. And private use is the enemy of tax-exempt bonds. We managed to find a way to do that on a tax-exempt basis. And that will be a challenge for anything that you do that's a public-private transaction because you need to keep that private portion as low, not in terms of the contribution, but the actual use, either as low as you can get it or pursuant to some sort of qualifying management contract to allow yourself to move forward on this transaction. I worked as underwriters counsel on King County bonds that finance what's now known as T-Mobile Park for the Washington State Major League Baseball Public Facilities District. I was bond counsel for the Super Public Facilities District that built and owns the CenturyLink Field. So I was the state's bond counsel on that transaction. I'm bond counsel to Snohomish County, which issued bonds to finance a public facilities district funded project for what's called the Future of Flight Museum. That's a project that's had its ups and downs, and perhaps it might be instructive for any public facilities district in terms of sort of feasibility and things like that. And then I do lots and lots of other bond counsel work. My biggest client is the state agency that finances healthcare facilities, including Harrison here in Kitsap County and probably every other nonprofit hospital in the state. I'm active in the county. You'll see I'm a trustee of the Kitsap Regional Library. I'm actually the vice president of the board this year. Been on that board for 7 years. I'm active in the arts. The gentleman who was talking about the sunshine, I actually play in the hometown band, and I would love to see a facility, a rehearsal facility available to community musical groups. And I've been active in art. I'll call it a synagogue. It's not. It's a chavurah, but it's a Chavurat Shir Hayam, which is the Jewish group, one of the Jewish groups on Main Bridge Island. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Questions from the board? I would ask, what distinguishes you from the other bond councils that we're looking at? How do we make a good determination of which one to choose?
Well, everyone you're going to talk to today is very well respected and does great work. You can't make a bad choice. I think what I bring to the table is a commitment to the county the same as you have. This is where I live. I'm invested in the success of this county and the economic development here, and I've been doing it as part of my day-to-day practice for quite a few years. And so that's the one thing that sets me apart from my colleagues here, and they're all great. They're all really good.
Thank you.
One of the things that makes us different than the other PFDs is we actually don't own and operate the facilities. We are an investor partner with a public entity that will run, own, and operate the facility. How is that going to be different as far as the taxability or tax structure or taxable or non-taxable bonds?
I don't think that'll change that analysis, as long as your partner is another local government, like the county, like the city, like the Parks Department. That shouldn't change that analysis in any way. And in some ways, it makes it perhaps easier for you because you're a funding source but not an operating agency. You don't have the hassle of the operating side. Right. On the other hand, you want to make sure that whoever does have it has the resources to do what they're doing and the ability to make that project, whichever one it is, as successful as possible. And that's always a challenge with public facilities.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
In our past history, we've never had or never given a grant to anything other than a public facility. There is a grant applicant this year that is a private corporation. Mm-hmm. And so how different is it going to be for us to deal with in that case?
Well, so one challenge with giving any public agency giving grants to private entities is the state constitution, which has a prohibition on lending of credit and gift of public funds. And I don't know enough about the applicants to know how that would work out. I think in the end, you probably actually try and structure whatever grant you have to go to a public partner that's partnering with the private entity so that your money is flowing to another government rather than directly to a private entity, is my guess.
So let me expand on this question. The Port of Bremerton is one that we're working with for a project that's
Mhm.
under consideration. They lease their property to a private corporation. Is there anything wrong with that?
No, and in fact, ports have way more power to lease and cut contractual arrangements with private entities than most governments. Ports are in the business of economic development. That's one of their purposes, and so they have way more power than most other entities. Public facilities districts have probably as much power as most other governments. It's harder for, let's take my agency, the Kitsap Library. We don't have much power to do anything with private entities. We're supposed to be working with other local governments. So just different statutory authority in that regard.
But in the case that Bill mentioned, the port is a landlord for the applicant. Has nothing to do with them. We're still dealing with a private agency. The court is a landlord who's managing the money that we're giving to the private corporation.
Well, so ultimately, you're going to create a public facility somehow with your dollars. And I don't know anything about these applications, so I can't talk about structure. But the goal would be to make sure that your money goes into a facility that is owned by and benefited the public in some way.
So as I understand the law, we will have, if we do this, we would have an interlocal agreement with the Port of Bremerton, not with any private sector, private entity.
That makes sense.
So we would have an interlocal agreement with the Port of Bremerton. The money would flow to the Port of Bremerton, and then they have the statutory authority to deal with private sector, right?
Correct. That is one way to do it, certainly in that case. You have, I know for the conference center, you have an interlocal agreement with the county and the city. And, there are private entities that run that. They have management contracts. There's a hotel management contract. There's a parking management contract. And that's a typical kind of arrangement for these facilities.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank
Dan.
you. Send the next
Thank you very much.
Bond firms we've talked to. I'm Stacy Lewis. I'm a partner at Pacifica Law Group. I'm here with Allison Bench, who's our tax partner at Pacifica. We're happy to be here. I hope you've got our proposal that we sent in. We formed Pacifica 8 years ago. I left what had been Preston Gates and Ellis that became K&L Gates to form Pacifica, which is a firm that's focused on serving public and private clients in the Pacific Northwest, including our bond counsel clients. Since the time we formed, we've been really gratified by the response by our clients. Since we formed, we are now 36 attorneys, including 6 attorneys in our public finance group, and we've served as bond counsel in over 700 bond issues for over $16 billion. So it was a wonderful choice to set out on our own and create a firm that's really focused on serving municipal entities and other clients in the Pacific Northwest. We work with a number of public facilities districts, including the Washington State Convention Center Public Facilities District. We just served as bond counsel on their bond issue to finance the expansion of the Seattle Convention Center. It was a $1.2 billion financing backed by sales taxes. Very complicated, very interesting transaction that closed a few months ago. We also serve as bond counsel to the Richland Public Facilities District in connection with their financing of the Heat Breach Interpretive Center and the Everett Public Facilities District, and just did a financing for them of some a refinancing essentially of the arena that they make available to the Silver Chips, and taking advantage of the extension of the sales tax, just like you all. I'm actually pleased to be here. It feels like a full circle. I don't know if any board members were on the board at the time of the 2002 financing.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
I don't know if you remember. I came and gave a presentation, and I want probably was in 2001, so I would have been at that time a fourth-year lawyer at Preston Gates and Ellis, and talked about bond financing, and I've now been doing it for more than 20 years. Locally, we serve as bond counsel to Kitsap County and to Kitsap Transit. Worked as bond counsel for Kitsap Transit on their financing of the passenger ferry facilities, and that also is a sales tax bond with a number of features that share some similarities with your bond structure, including they had some outstanding sales tax bonds and needed to figure out a way to do their subsequent financing with an additional sales tax stream, weighing the pros and cons of blending things together, keeping them separate, and having one that was essentially senior and then subordinate to their existing bonds. Yeah, exactly. And because of the experience from way back when and your original financing for the convention center and the fairgrounds, et cetera, I'm familiar with the interlocal agreement with the county. We do serve as bond counsel to the county. I talked to Jacqueline Oftahide to make sure that the county would be comfortable with waiving any potential conflict. They said the county is not involved in this financing, and they did not see from their perspective any conflict with our serving as bond counsel to Kitsap County on their bond issues, and also being available to you all to serve as your bond counsel and disclosure counsel. Happy to answer any questions. We included a fee proposal in our proposal. Allison is a great resource to have here. She is one of the few people in the Northwest that spends all of her time every day working on the tax status of municipal bonds. So all of the difficult tax questions, including with the public-private arrangements that a number of our clients undertake, Allison is really the expert in that area. And I will say on that front, we serve as outside counsel to the public entity that owns the CenturyLink that's leased to the Seahawks and the Safeco, and then to the PFD that owns the now T-Mobile park that's leased to the Mariners. So lots and lots of experience in public financing of facilities that involve a private entity, and understanding where you can use tax-exempt bonds and where you need to introduce some taxable bonds and give yourself a little more breathing room on that front. Allison, anything that you would add on that?
I'm mostly here for moral support, but happy to answer any questions you have with limited, factual background. There's only so much I can do, but I can lay some general groundwork. I started practicing in 2002 with Hunt & Williams on the East Coast, and I've then worked for a firm in California, and for the last 3 years have been with Stacy and my other folks at Pacifica, and it's just like a really great firm with a very strong vision of what they want to be and what they want to do. So I'm just thrilled to be working with them and to be with you all tonight.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
So there are some PFDs that do taxable as well as non-taxable bonds?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so even for the baseball stadium had both tax exempt and taxable series. A number of the other facilities. We've actually, the Everett Public Facilities District financing that we just completed, they had originally financed all of their facilities on a tax exempt basis, and now had this opportunity to do an additional financing with the longer sales tax stream, and at the same time took a look at the kinds of activities they had in their facility, as well as the kinds of activities that they foresee, and wanted to give themselves enough running room to be able to essentially generate revenue that makes sense for the facility without being hemmed in with having 100% tax exempt financing. And so they introduced a portion of their most recent financing on a taxable basis, and did a tax exempt series and a taxable series, and felt that they gave themselves comfortable room to make some business decisions downstream that they may very well want to do. So it's certainly something that PFDs do and think about.
Okay. And it depends on the timing. The financial advisor can help with what the differential is. Sometimes there's not a large differential between tax exempt and taxable rates, especially if you want to do earlier maturing bonds as taxable bonds. You still get a pretty low rate, and it can make sense to do it that way and leave yourself some flexibility. And perhaps it may be the only way to structure the deal, how you want to structure it.
Interesting.
That would be a good question for the folks who are coming right after us.
Good, I'll write that one down.
And they can provide very good advice on that in terms of weighing the flexibility versus the incremental cost of having taxable bonds.
You bring up in your proposal here that the conflict of interest, which I thought was great of you to bring it up right away, that you serve the county in that regard. Our hope would be that we can work with the county, but they have said, maybe we wouldn't. If we were to work with the county, is there any conflict of interest then for you as you would represent both parties?
We would not, we serve as bond counsel to the county when the county issues bonds. So for example, if you decided that you'd like to have the county issue the bonds again and that makes most financial sense, then we would need to serve as bond counsel to the county and we could not serve as your bond counsel. If you issue the bonds and you have some project or some agreement you want to have with the county, if we'd need to talk to the county's prosecuting attorneys to see whether they would represent the county on that side of the agreement or whether they would want to bring us in as the county's bond counsel. And if they did, we'd bond counsel to Kitsap County and we would be out of the picture for you all. So that would be something for sure to have on your radar.
And if we did work with the county, would we need a bond counsel still?
If the PFD issues the bonds, then the PFD will want to have a bond counsel to the PFD. If another entity issues the bonds, either the county or the city,
Right.
insert XYZ
They would
issuer,
have their
they would
own
have the
bond
bond
counsel.
counsel, and you would not need bond counsel on your
Okay.
side. You would have the excellent services of Brian Waller to help you with those agreements.
Excellent.
But we would probably need a financial advisor to make sure that fiduciary responsibility is in our favor.
Question that I asked previously too is, how do we make a good decision? How do we choose between the three of you?
I would say that all three firms you have here tonight are excellent bond counsel firms, and you will not go wrong picking any one of the three firms. I say that with complete sincerity. So I think it's just a question of, fit with the kinds of projects you want to do, the fee proposals that we've submitted, or what other factors that you think are important. But I think you're in a great position because honestly, those are three excellent bond counsel firms. Every one of them will give you great service. Yes.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Stacy.
Sure, happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Happy to be.
Say something?
No, please, come on in.
It looks like you've got
Start
a
your
very
presentation.
busy agenda tonight, so.
Yeah.
Where would you like us?
I think most people have been right there for camera's sake. Thank you.
Back here, I was challenged later. Oh, in the campus way. I got you. We're ready?
You're up.
We're up. So we're here to talk to you about being a financial advisor and what we would do for you. And if you look at this handout, we service financial advisor program 20 or 30 projects a year. We don't sell bonds, we don't give legal advice, but we do is help entities like you figure out the best way to either borrow money or spend your money and then assist in doing it. We do a lot of bank loans. Sometimes bank loans are cheaper than bond issues. We do a lot of bond issues, and we analyze that. If we decide you can get low rates at the bank loan, we do an RFP for banks, and you might get 10 responses. If we do a bond issue, we look at the credit for it and figure out if you can sell it well, you might want to get the county to guarantee the debt, so on and so forth. So we get very involved in that. The actual, what we do for a living, the most important thing we do is give you good advice. Let's sort all these things out and make think about it. If it actually comes down to the point of doing a bank loan or a bond issue, We've done so many of those that that's fairly straightforward. It takes lots and lots of work. But I think the most important thing we can provide to you as a board is good, strong advice. So with that said, let me go through this presentation quickly. If you turn to the first page, we're a firm with 3 principal people. We're all involved in projects, but we don't want to duplicate our time. So if we're billing by the hour, you don't want 3 of us billing every time we get a discussion. But we all want to be involved so that if I'm not available, or Scott's not available, Linda's not available, somebody will be available and knows what's going on, so I can help you. Scott and I are principals in the firm, worked together for many years. For the last several years, Melinda Okerlund has joined us. She worked for many years in the public finance department at Wells Fargo. So she was doing bank loans in that area for public entities. So if we do a bank loan RFP, Melinda's integrally involved because she understands the way banks think, who's good, who's bad, so on and so forth. If you turn to the next page, so a general overview. I formed this firm 20 plus years ago. Scott's been with us a dozen years or so. Worked on many, many entities. We're Washington-based, local, do lots of this kind of work. We've also done a lot of work with public facility districts. In fact, some of the public facility districts we helped form back in 2001 or 2002 when they got going. So that's one of the things I'll let Scott talk about. And I think I've talked about this page, but really our most important thing is to provide you good advice. And let me turn this over to Scott and let him talk a bit about sort of our experience of what else we do. And feel free to interrupt and ask questions as we go through this.
Yes. So this is on the recent experience page. Just want to give you a sense of some of the projects that we've worked on. I guess largely actually these are just in the past years. So we did the financing. Actually, this Lewis County Public Facilities District was just earlier this year. It was a refinancing and a reshaping of their existing debt. Their existing debt had gone out to the state limit, but they were able to extend it. So they took it from an escalating debt service to a flat debt service and then added on additional money over that, keeping actually the debt service at below their 2016 revenue. So that was important for both them and for the county to guarantee the debt. They wanted to keep that. So we provided as many funds as we could given those limits. Snohomish County Public Facilities District, they have taxing authority throughout the county, and they actually distribute those funds to the various PFDs, including Edmonds, Linwood, Everett, and the future of flight. So last year we worked on a project to help them distribute the additional allocation to those sites. Everett PFD then also refinanced some of their debts. They had 2007 bonds, and they also had a 2014 bond that the city had issued for them. And in that case, again, we reshaped the debt, extended it out so that lowered their debt service payments, but also took the 2014 debt, which was variable debt, and turned it into fixed rate debt. So now all of their debt is fixed rate. And then finally, Spokane Public Facilities District, we're currently working with them on the project is about $50 million for a sportsplex, probably bonding about $35 million. Spokane has been able to issue their debt on a standalone. They haven't had a guarantee, although they have had in the past the county and the Valley City issue bonds, and actually in this case, the county will be issuing debt on their behalf, but the PFD will pay them the county for the debt. So again, those are just a couple of the projects that we've most recently worked on. And the last slide, I actually won't step through this, but as Alan mentioned, sort of the easy part is once you figure out what you want to do, the actual financing of the debt is fairly straightforward, but this just sort of takes you through some high-level steps of financing the debt. So with that, I think I'll open it up to you.
Questions?
Let me make just a couple of comments. We talked briefly with Mike, and he thinks you have roughly $30 million you might be able to allocate.
That's the maximum under the best conditions. It could be less than that.
Well, we could come up with more, but that's...
Well, that's even better.
We came up with the low 30s, assuming a growth of 3% per year, something like that. So it's a lot of money, but if you're looking at $180 million projects, you have some very tough decisions to make. We have in our in our proposal to you, our fee schedule, I can talk about that if you want to, just a couple of details on it. We never want you to feel we're overcharging, so if you think we are, I'm sure that Mike would appropriately approach us. We have a fee amount if you do a bond issue, that's a fixed fee, and then it grows if the bond gets bigger. If it's easy, if it's short and small, we always reduce that fee. If we're doing a bank loans are much easier than a bond issue because there's not so much bureaucracy and paperwork and so on and so forth. So our fees are much lower for that too. So we adjust those as appropriate. We want to be paid fairly, but we don't overbill you. And so that's a common thing. That's our, without going into the details, that's our fee schedule and how we work it.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Looking at the Spokane, when you're talking about like potential for over $30 million for us, is that with the credit rating that we would have coming through just as the public facilities, or are you thinking if we have to sister on to something like the county where they've already got a rating?
You know, we would have to look at your history.
You're looking at it.
I don't see you borrowing $30 million. I mean, you're going to borrow some portion of that. And if your history of revenues coming in, sales tax revenues coming in, would cover it plus some cushion, you're fine by yourself. If you need to assume 4% growth in sales tax to pay for it, then you need some county benefit. The other thing we could look at is you could do it yourself or get the county. The county's a AA plus county, if I recall correctly. The county might guarantee your debt in certain situations, even if you could pay for it, give you a higher rating. That would help a little bit. But I would like to see you do it independently if possible.
Our assumption had always been, because the first time we did it, the county issued in bonds, and our assumption on this time would be that we would do a little bit better if the county issued them because of their credit rating versus what we essentially have no rating because we've never done it.
Right.
And then the other associated costs that we would save if the county did it. Is there rationale that you can help us with? The county has initially indicated they weren't interested, but we would like to perhaps reopen that discussion. Are there good and sufficient reasons that we could give the county why it's a good deal for them?
Well, it's a good deal county-wide because you'll get lower interest rates. If the county issued debt, they could do a competitive bond sale. They're AA plus county,
So we could put relatively more money into
it would free up
projects instead of
You're talking
interest costs.
Maybe 0.25% different interest rates, something like that. Maybe less, but that's, for $30 million, that's a lot of money. If you're borrowing a few $1 million from a bank, you might be better off just doing it by yourself. So. I'm looking at your ex-county commissioner here, but that depends on what the county wants to do. Comments, Scott?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd say the best that you can get is the county to issue the debt and you pay them. The next, just below that, is you issuing it with a contingent loan agreement with the county. Again, that would get you a rating probably on par with the county, but then again, in the bond market, it's sold as limited sales tax bonds, so it looks a little bit different, so you're penalized a bit on that. Followed by then no guarantee, then you need quite a bit of margin above your revenues to sell it.
And the contingent with the county, would that then lower the amount that they, as just the county, could go out into the market and get? I mean, do we absorb some of their ability to borrow if they're contingent on ours?
Right, so generally the county has, as far as statutory debt capacity goes, quite a bit of debt capacity. So I don't think it would be harmful to them.
Yeah.
Alan, I thought I heard you say that you would recommend going independently would be your first suggestion to us, but then we just talked about that going with the county would actually provide us more money. So can you speak more to that?
I probably spoke out of context. If the county is willing to step up and do it, it would save everybody money. I think you certainly could do it independently if you're borrowing within a reasonable limit. But that would be choice B. Choice C. Choice B would be a contingent loan agreement with the county. A city could potentially do it too, but since many of your projects are bigger countywide, it would make sense for the county to step up.
What is a contingent agreement? If the county's hesitant to go do a bond, include us in a bond, why would they be interested in being a contingent loan thing?
As opposed to doing it themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and this, a little bit's gonna depend on the bond council, and that's the folks you just saw here, as to whether a contingent loan counts fully on their statutory debt capacity. If they issue the debt, it absolutely does.
I see.
If it's issued by you on a contingent loan agreement, it may, but that's, would be for the bond council to determine. And then, you know, what they are stepping up on would be, if there is a shortfall in debt service, then they step in to pay the debt service.
It's a guarantee.
Absolutely.
They loan you the money.
Right. As a loan, it would be paid back by the PFD once you have sufficient revenues to do it.
Other questions? As we've come into this decision, we're making a decision on how to spend money that we'll receive as a county or through sales tax. Starting in 2026 and going to 2041, we've given our county 9 months to a year to prepare proposals to come to us and say, hey, here are ideas of how to make our county a better place and how we think that we can work with the PFD's goals. It seems to me a little short-sighted for us to make a decision so quickly, to think like, here are our 7 best ideas we're going to have over the next 20 some years. And so I've always thought to give a portion of the money now, but then to do this same process again and make another decision 5 years from now or 7 years from now, and then again do it again 7 years from now. What do you think of that idea? And are there ways that you can think of that, you know, would fit that with how we would do the financing for that?
Well, I think it's, if you spend all your money now, then you're, I won't say stuck forever, but you really have no possibility to do other things. And other PFDs we've worked with have done a similar thing. Let's put some money here, put some money here, keep some in reserves. Some of this, I mean, until 2026, you know, what you're doing is getting money on extensions. So I would definitely keep some money in your pocket if I was, but that's a policy decision.
Mm-hmm.
But from our perspective, it gives you more flexibility.
And to be conservative, you could, you know, I guess maximize the projects based on no growth in sales tax, and then come back in 5 years and see how things have changed and what kind of margin you have, if that would allow for any projects to either be bonded against or to provide, you know, grants or however you would work.
Another idea is part of trying to create more money instead of, hey, we'll take the lump sum now and spend it, was to have the different projects do their own either bonding or loans, and we would enter into an agreement with them where on this schedule we will pay this amount, and so we aren't the ones both taking the risk, but we're also hopefully being able to give away more money throughout the time that we have this sales tax coming in. What do you think of that as an idea, and have you seen that done in other PFDs?
We have, I think it's actually a very good idea. I mean, if you can get like the port to issue bonds on your behalf of the county for a project that they're interested in, and you say we will give you X% or some dollar amount to pay for part of it, I think that's really good. That becomes, it's going to come down to policy decisions of your board in some cases of what makes the most sense. But that's the kind of numbers we can run and give you analysis and say, okay, here's what that would look like.
How long would it take for us to find out exactly how much we'd be able to get?
From 2026 on?
Or if we were to do the bonds now, or the loan, when would we have an actual number?
If you wanted to borrow everything, you mean?
Yes. How long you looking, like 3 months, 6 months?
Well, we could run numbers today based on an assumed growth rate and say it's $32 million. If you say it's not gonna grow, because who knows, it could be a recession, how much could you borrow then? That's probably $22 or $23 million. And we can go through and refine that by refining interest rates, but that's ballpark.
So we'd get a range?
Yeah.
And you could do that pretty much right away?
Yes.
Okay.
In trouble based on current interest rates. Interest rates right now are extremely low, which is great. So we always provide, well, it's 3% here, and if it's 4% interest rates, here's what the difference is.
Other questions? How do we make a good decision in choosing a financial advisor? How do we make the choice between choosing you and choosing the next group that'll come in and present to us?
I think that's up to the board to make that decision.
No easy way?
Pardon?
No easy way to do it?
Oh, I think, I can give a recommendation if you would like. I would like to say one thing in closing, that we went through and looked at your website and all the information. Whoever's doing all that work is doing a great job. There's so much information on there, what's going on, what you're thinking about, what's happened, the projects you have on. You're extremely busy board. I'm very impressed. So it would be an honor to work with you and help you on this.
Thank you very much, Al. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Now, should we disappear, or should we stick around, or what's the?
I think you're free to go if you like. I don't know, Darren, were you planning to take a vote tonight, or do you want to consider the proposals and make a selection at a future date?
Well, one idea that I do have is that we should choose our financial advisor first before we choose our bond counsel. Do you think, if you are going to be our quarterback, if you are going to be the person who helps us think through all the different possibilities, would that make sense to make this decision before the bond counsel, or it really doesn't matter who we choose for bond counsel for you because every single one of them you've worked with before and are going to be fine working with?
The three firms you're interviewing are all excellent firms. We worked with all of them for a while.
Yeah.
So it would be fine either way.
Okay. Thank you.
Get Mr. Blumenthal?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Or Mike can do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan and Scott.
Sorry, I was just getting my screen up here.
Yeah, no worries.
So Jim Blumenthal, Martin Nelson and Company. If you don't know us, Martin Nelson and Company's been around for 60 plus years. I've been in the business for 25. The firm's located in Seattle on the shores of South Lake Union. We're north of the Amazon campus. We're both an FA firm and a bond underwriter, which gives us an advantage over other firms. By being in the market as well as a financial advisor, we have a chance to actually experience pricing, and that gives us a better hands-on idea of what the market is doing over standalone FA firms. With respect to my background, I've been in the business for 25 years. My largest project was $400 million. My riskiest project was affordable housing and industrial development. And I've also financed infrastructure for cities, counties, ports, K through 12, fire service, water, sewer, nonprofit. One of my more interesting projects was to finance Bremerton School District's partial expansion at Bremerton High and Mountain View Middle School without a tax increase and without paying any debt service for 3 years. That was a fun project. I've had a chance to review quickly the portions of the proposed projects for Kitsap Public Facilities District. Generally speaking, I would say our firm takes a business approach to what we would call community amenity financing, which encourages the projects with the most challenge in terms of cash flow to be funded from participating government reserves, tax sources, or contingent tax sources, not the PFD's annual sales tax law. If you do use the approach, it's going to maximize project revenue for the PFD, which then you can apply towards the projects with the greatest certainty, greatest economic prospects, greatest impact in the community. It's not unlike what we've done for ports. Generally, we apply tax sources to repayment of debt service on the weakest projects until they incubate and they're cash flow producing, at which point then those tax sources can be used to other weaker projects. And then, in essence, what you do is you take the tax sources away from the weakest project, which is now a strong project, and you can borrow against a revenue-producing project, but it's much more stable. So similar kind of approach, a little different setting, but I would say that's how we view it. And to make the strategy more politically palatable for the communities that might not receive PFD funds in the 2019 selection process, the PFD might be able to make contributions for a vote campaign strategy person, communication specialist, maybe funds for the cost of the election, those kinds of things. That way, you're still trying to move the project along, advance it in the community, you're still supporting the community, but you're not taking the liability on for a project until maybe there's other state resources involved in the project, there's more reserves behind it, maybe there's more municipalities behind it to support repayment of debt service if there was ever a problem. And so that's generally our approach, and that's what we would bring to you. Some would say this is a conservative approach, but it's been faithful to Martin Nelson and Company for the 60 plus years that we've been around. That's why we're still around. And with that, I provided some background on other structures that would be applicable to the projects you're considering in my letter to the PFD. If you have any questions related to that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, questions from the board?
I have a question on, your cover letter brought up something that was interesting. It said, looking at rates on a bond issue from PFD, it said that the rate could be contingent upon the economic strength of the actual project. Mm-hmm. And then it also mentioned primary, secondary, and tertiary support. So if we don't have our projects finalized when we go to bond, is that not unexpected?
Let me put it this way. I would say that the way to get the best result is to have not just one single source of repayment, but to have other sources of repayment. That can be in the form of municipalities contributing funds. It can be in the support of contingent tax support. So in other words, a city, not the county, I know they wouldn't do it, but other municipalities, city, the port, could pledge to provide money to pay debt service under certain conditions. If you have those kinds of things in place, kind of a laddered approach to repayment of debt service in the case of a challenge, economic challenge, meaning there's not enough sales tax, it's fallen off, let's say, then that's the best case to move forward. What we don't want to do, and what we wouldn't want to see you do, or be placed in the position of doing, is moving ahead with a project with a lot of uncertainty and without secondary sources of repayment at a minimum, or hopefully even a third source of repayment. The best success you can have is one in which a project actually works, it's done, and it creates community trust and moves forward. And that's what I would say, I would encourage you to do, is to be sure that you've got not just one source of repayment, but these others as well. And that's what we would try to do to help if that's needed. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, partially. That answers the second question. Let me go back to the first part. So if we say we want to go out for some of the funding now because the market's very good for bonding, but we don't know for sure that we're going to put 10 million here and 2 million there and 4 million there. So we don't have a project with a dollar amount that the underwriters can look at and say, great project, not great economic return. Do we have to have that project named, or can we bond based on the sales tax revenue?
Obviously, you can bond on the sales tax revenue, and as long as that debt is pledged to that cash flow, you certainly could go out with that. What I would encourage, though, is to have the project defined if you can. Any kind of a project that has a community effort to, if you will, gather support for it, it creates a snowball. That's good. Let me give you an example. I had a client that, and this is it's gonna be funny. I had a client, fire service client, who put their fire engine in the Christmas parade every year. And the fire district had been trying to minimize the amount of tax monies that they were requesting from the public because they were trying to minimize that cost. Well, that worked for a while. Their fleet suffered as a result because it wasn't being upgraded and maintained. And so in the middle of the parade, before Christmas, the fire engine stopped, stalled, and they couldn't restart it. And so essentially, there was the manifestation of not being able to maintain your fleet. And the public saw it, and they recognized, oh my gosh, we have a problem, because if I'm having a heart attack or my house is on fire, I want to know that my fire service, which I'm paying for, is going to be able to help me. But it was very clear to them, to the public, that that's what was needed. And so they came out with a ballot measure and asked the public for funding to support upgrading a program of upgrading and maintaining the fleet over time. And they totally understood it. And they were ready and willing to come up with the tax support to support it. So what I'm trying to say is, to the extent that those pockets of vision can be fully identified and bought into by the community, you're much better off long run. And again, that's our view on it.
Other questions?
I have one. So once we decide to issue a bond, for instance, come up with the amount, how long does it take before we actually have that money? Does it take to issue the bonds and get the payment and everything?
Generally speaking, it takes 60 days.
Okay.
With a dedicated repayment source like you're talking about with the PFD, 60 days is very doable.
Okay, thanks.
When the first financial advisor was in here, we had a discussion in regards to independently putting out the bonds ourselves or working with the county. What would your recommendation be?
Well, my thought when Mike mentioned that was now is a good time to be talking with the bond insurers to see if we can get the bonds issued by yourself. You have a track record of making debt payments on time. The project is an excellent project. The past project, the Kitsap Conference Center, et cetera, has a wonderful track record. And so I think we would encourage you to explore seeing if you can issue the debt on your own, and through the financial advisors such as our firm or other firms, in essence survey investors to kind of get their view and see what that means in terms of rate, and then what the mitigating factors could be. It may be even that it may not be, there's some other ways that could address this problem that would help you get to the market on your own. But I would definitely want to go that route first. I think it's really, if it doesn't start now, it should, because at some point, as your projects continue to grow and you keep adding new projects and getting them done, you're going to have your own track record. So, in my view, that should be a program that continues on. It shouldn't just start, it should start now, but not stop.
So the fact that we currently pay the county who pays the
Correct.
interest, correct? So we don't We're on Daddy's credit card.
Right.
You know, but we're named on it.
Right.
So are we still getting credit for that because the projects themselves are performing?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it really boils down to, is the success of the project.
I had the impression, though, that you seem to indicate it would be preferable to us to issue our own bonds. I had the impression that we could save money if we could have the county issue the bonds.
That's true, but I also mentioned that it would be worth exploring to see if you could get bond insurance. If you get bond insurance, then that would get you a AA rating. I believe the county's AA, at least that. So that would put you on par with the county.
So that would increase our cost because we'd have the bond insurance, but it would bring down our interest rate.
To what you could get with the county.
Bond insurance.
Yeah, no, it's common product, just like you buy car insurance or house insurance. Basically, you're paying a premium up front that says that in the event of default, the insurer will make the debt service payments. And our goal would be to try to make that premium as low as possible. But we would evaluate that and the other structures that might be open to you if you issued on your own versus what the county could do.
Is a contingent loan agreement similar to bond insurance or totally different?
Yeah, it's very similar. But I know the county doesn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Oh, the contingent fee is what you have to get from the county. You can't get that from an insurance company.
Well, basically, the county's acting like the insurer. They would step in to make debt service payments if there was a problem. And they may charge an annual fee for something like that. But in Kitsap County, I understand that that's not an avenue that's...
I think I know why.
Yeah, I think we all know why. Okay. And you've heard that out there that the county doesn't want to do these.
Yeah, I was just at a county conference, and Meredith was there, your county treasurer. She made it clear that the county had a policy in place to ban contingent loan agreements.
I don't understand the difference between a contingent arrangement with the county and having the county issue the bonds.
Well, in the contingent agreement, the county steps in only when there's a problem. If the county issues the debt, then they pay the debt service and send the bill to you, and you reimburse the county. So one is in the event of a crisis, and the other is just a funding vehicle.
But the county's still holding the bag if we couldn't meet
Either way,
debt service payment. So from the county's point of view, I'm not sure I see a whole lot of difference.
Well, that's true. Nowadays, I would say that's very true. It's just that that the county would be giving up. I'm trying to recall. The county might be giving up debt capacity for future issuance that they may need. And under the contingent loan agreement, and I can't recall now if that's changed, under one scenario, they would not have the liability, and under another scenario, they would. I would assume that they would. So from that perspective, meaning it's still a liability of the county, there isn't much difference. It's just that, you know, the county is not really making any cash payments unless there's a problem.
Okay.
For seeking these 7 proposals, we gave our county and our community a year roughly to come up with these ideas and present them to us. And it would be my thinking that if given 5 years or 7 years or 10 years, that there would be more and better ideas that would come forward to us. And so the idea of bonding all the money now or spending all the money now or committing all the money now is probably not the best decision for us as a community. That this is money that we'll be earning until 2041, and so we kind of lock ourselves in with any bigger projects that we can do. Are there ways that you would recommend that would allow us to take a third of the money now, take a third of the money in 7 years, take another third of the money in 14 years? And would that be beneficial to being able to fund more possibly too?
I would, you're running a selection process, and I would continue that. And my thought was, if you can offer other types of support for the projects that have the most risk, then you're setting a path to say, if you have this kind of a project with these parts to it, then we'll fund. And that was kind of what I was leading to, in essence, is you can, the challenge is there's more needs always than money. And so you want to be able to fund improvements that you can afford and that you can put in place effectively and that run well. And so, my thought was, by coming up with these other ways to identify projects that have certain criteria that make them more of a challenge than others, and trying to set pathways for those projects that would ensure that they could move forward if the other municipality brings something else to the table, then you're setting a long-term model up of what that's going to look like. And then you can just do that over and over again. There's all kinds of things you can do. Part of me was thinking it'd be nice if the PFD could set up a fund that in essence would be another source of support that's sort of like a secondary or third level of support for debt service. But it's a reserve in case there's a hiccup on a project or things like that. You want to build in sort of this long-term model that helps you advance the best projects forward, gets them funded, gets them working, but also to the extent that you can provide some reserves that will protect the PFD, protect these other municipalities when they bring their projects forward too. I think it would be great if they could be built in. So I'm not sure if I'm asking your question, but I think from our perspective, we would want to see that there is adequate coverage from multiple places for the debt service that's being put in place. And we can help in terms of what that visioning might look like with the municipality to help move them along, to talk to their community, to say, look, we need this other piece. Because, again, nobody wants a hiccup that can't, dealing with the legalities of a hiccup to bond issue are a nightmare. I've never had to, fortunately, in the 25 years I've been doing this, I've never had to deal with it. And trust me, you don't want that. So it really means making sure that the projects have adequate support in the worst case. I've got a project now, in essence, that the county is working with the port and a city, and they're all deciding on what sorts of support they can provide that will back up the debt if there is a worst case.
Rick?
I do have a question. From what you've said, it seems to me a couple of the projects are big construction projects, but they don't have a feasibility analysis yet. And that it would be beneficial for us to put off the bonding till we make the decisions, because there's a lot of them, it seems. If these projects get the feasibility and the feasibility study, we'd know how to proceed if it's good.
Right.
Positive, it looks like it's a success. So that would give us some information with which to take a bond later.
Well, and like I said, you could even provide money for a feasibility study. So now you're not taking on the liability, but you're still trying to advance the project. So you're not saying no, absolutely. But you're just saying we're not there yet.
Sounds like we're not.
Another idea that I want to run by you is not doing bonds at all, but for all of the projects, having them come up with whatever amounts of capital that they need, but we enter into an agreement with them, a schedule of sorts, where we say, we'll provide this on this date, given these circumstances are met. And the idea would be that we can actually give away more capital to more projects by not taking on the debt.
Right. You and I are talking the same thing. That's exactly it. I think to the extent that you can have at least two sources of repayment for your debt, if that's in place, then you have a basis to move forward. In one case, maybe it's 50% of the money is coming, I think you've got a project like this, 50% of the money is coming from a local government, and you're going to provide the other 50%. But that 50% maybe needs voter approval. You know, these types of structures move forward all the time, as long as those are in place. So that's your model, I think. So.
In that scenario, so say the cities is putting the 50% in, where's our secondary on our debt if we're doing the other 50%?
Well, what I'm saying is the debt, presumably, in this case, the debt is being supported in both cases. There isn't a secondary source in both cases, but there is solid support in both cases. What I'm trying to do is keep away from a situation where debt service would be paid from the project, like there's money that you collect from the project, let's say, the racetrack as an example. And you know, initially, whenever there's a startup of a new enterprise, it's very difficult. So let's just say an enterprise starts up, they can't make the debt service payments. Well, then there's no secondary source to go grab to make the debt service. That's what I'm saying when I was talking about having secondary sources. In the case of, I think it's Paulsbo, where they're offering 50%, it's tax supported, which is the strongest and most, it's reliable, predictable revenue sources. So from a market perspective, those are strong sources, and that's okay. You don't need secondary levels of support.
So for us, though, our debt services comes from sales tax revenue,
right,
whether the project does anything or not. So does that not tie back to the project so much then?
So we're not looking for revenue from any of these projects.
Yeah, we have no expectation.
Well, I was thinking the racetrack might have had some, and so I was trying to guard against the worst case scenario. So in cases where there are, in essence, community projects like you're describing, tax sources are the most reliable, one of the most reliable. And so under that scenario where it's a community amenity, then I would say my analysis changes, and you can rely on strong tax sources wherever those are.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much for your time, Jim, and all of your answers.
Sure.
Let's take a very short 3-minute stretch your legs break, and we'll reconvene and make a decision on our financial advisor and move into the evaluation of project. So, my fellow board members here, I think getting our financial advisor in place as soon as we can is important, and so I think we should vote on that. I'm fine with waiting on the bond council until we can look at the numbers a little bit more. Those are my thoughts. Are you all okay with choosing the financial advisor tonight and making that choice, or are there any thoughts in a different direction?
What do you guys think?
I'm fine with tonight. I'm okay with it.
All right.
You okay?
Yeah, but I can't choose which.
We're passionate both ways, yeah.
Well, let's go forward with making that decision then. I can start us by just saying I thought the Northwest Municipal Advisors, in my opinion, came across as more professional, more experienced. I liked Jim's creativity in thinking of different ideas, and I thought his idea, for example, of how do we continue to support each project even in the event that we choose not to fund them, right? Because they're all great projects and great proposals. So I thought that's, a great idea, and I like the spirit of that. But for me, I would choose Northwest Municipal Advisors and Alan Dashin. But let's have some discussion. Other thoughts?
I had a little bit of trouble following the second gentleman. He seemed to put a lot of emphasis on picking projects that where we would be able to demonstrate success. And Aaron and I had a conversation earlier. In many respects, we're not looking for a successful project. There's no way to measure success. We don't get any revenue from any of these projects. We're not looking for them to make money for the PFD. And in some respects, whether or not they make money is not the issue. I have the example of the Bremerton Conference Center. Well, they didn't turn a profit on paper for 10 years, but we got 3 new hotels down there and lots more activity and things happening around the conference center. So in my mind, that was a successful project. And the fact that, they didn't make a profit, for X number of years was almost not relevant as far as the PFD is concerned. They did what we wanted it to do.
Well, it was clear the first presenters have more experience with funding PFD projects. I mean, there was no comparison to what they knew about the public facility district and how to finance and how to take care of the business than the second gentleman. He just didn't really know. He was giving information, I thought, that was not really relevant to what PFDs do. And so I just think that the first presenters were the ones that we should choose.
Well, I do think the first presenter is probably the stronger, but I was pretty excited by what some of the things Jim thought we would benefit from, and that is like one, and perhaps the first presenters would agree, we might well benefit by doing our own bond, given a little bit later after we have really more information about these projects that haven't done their feasibility study yet, haven't really planned out, but have got the resources to. Once we see those feasibility studies, we'll know how much we can commit to supporting them. So probably the first presenters would be best at that point.
For me, I think it was the first one, Northwest Municipal Advisors. They just seem to have more experience. They had more options and seemed to know the business a little better.
Aaron, Tom?
For me, the one thing I liked getting a lot more pieces of information from Jim. The problem that it does for me is that I don't know anything about bonding. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I better figure out what all this stuff is. And with Bill, too, I agree that there was a lot of that stuff that's not pertinent to us. Kind of got me worked up with the idea of, oh no, are we supposed to be doing this? So I have more of a comfort level with the first group also, just in the fact that they seem to have a lot of public facilities district, and I don't want to learn how to bond.
I know I didn't have any choice.
Tom, how about you?
Yeah, I have nothing additional to say. I think you guys have all summed it up pretty well.
All right. Can I have a motion then to hire Northwest Municipal Advisors as our financial advisor?
I move we hire Northwest Municipal Advisors.
Second.
Any other discussion?
We do have an agreement that would need to be reviewed, I think, before I'd feel comfortable. So I would want Brian to review the agreement.
Can we take a vote contingent
Pending
on Brian's approval?
I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
I have for a little, did we look at the dollars, the costs on this? Were they fairly comparable?
Well, I just pulled it up
Did
now
you?
but I haven't had a chance to.
The one that we are choosing was more, but I don't think it's relative to making the choice. I think
But he also
we have a
did-
comfort level of everybody.
He's flexible in his
Yeah, he said
fees
it's
also.
negotiable.
I like that word.
Did he say it was negotiable, or that was Foster Pepper, wasn't it?
No.
Can I jump in here?
Yes,
Um,
please.
So I looked at their fee schedules. They both had a rate up to $20 million that was comparable, although Northwest Municipal Advisors was a little bit more if the amount is under 20 million. Above 20 million, Northwest Municipal Advisors simply said they would negotiate a cap or something. They didn't put a number in. Whereas Martin Nelson's above 20 million, he was $15,000 and then 50 cents per 1,000 of bonding amount.
Yeah, so Northwest is $1.25 per thousand, and
Up to
the other, Martin Nelson was $1.
Up to 20 million. And
Up to
above
20 million. So
they
that's-
changed their fee schedule.
It's cash.
Yeah. My comfort level makes that okay
Okay.
for me. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We've entered in discussion. I'm gonna call the vote. All those in
And it's contingent on
and it's contingent
Brian's
on
approval.
Brian approving all the language in it, per Tom's suggestion. So, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, I'd like to move our bond council decision to our next meeting. I don't think this is pertinent to us getting to the evaluation of projects, and I'd like to move right into the evaluation of projects. Number 7 on our agenda.
So we are at 8:03.
We are at 8:03. We are gonna stop at 8:30 and keep our 3-hour limit. But let's try and get through what we can get through.
Well, do we have more stuff to do though, other than the evaluations? Looks like we have some new business.
I don't think any of those rise to the level of importance of the evaluation of projects. Is that a fair statement, Mike? Are you comfortable with that? That we push 8
Yeah, no,
and
that's a
9
fair
to
statement.
July 15th?
Yeah, the budget revision can wait. The support letter for Columbia Hospitality had a shorter time fuse because they are going through an evaluation or an RFP process. And they'd hope to get a support letter before then, but that's up to you guys as to whether or not that's.
They're going through an RFP for someone looking to book at.
No, for renewal of their
for
management
theirs.
contract.
Oh, management.
They wanted a letter of support
The
from
Columbia
us.
Hospitality contract
I got
is
you.
running out this year, and they wanted to get RFP out so that they could evaluate candidates for rehiring them or hiring somebody else.
If I can make a suggestion, perhaps we could take care of the two number 8 items, because they'll both be relatively quick, I would think. We're not gonna finish the evaluation of projects by 8:30 in any case, and then just get as far as we can on the evaluation and then pick up wherever we leave off at the next meeting.
The support letter 8D, I have not even read that nor seen it. I guess it's in the packet, but I hadn't seen it until tonight. So is that something that we can just take a look at and handle via email as far as,
Yeah.
that doesn't really take a vote, right? We can.
No, I just wanted the board to be aware of it, and if they wanted to show support, otherwise, yeah, you and I can do it if you want to do it that way.
Yeah, they're just looking for us to say Columbia Hospitality seems to be doing a good job.
All right. So let's push the other ones to next meeting. We'll take care of Columbia Hospitality off the agenda, and let's get into the evaluation of projects. I can start us off again, and we'll go with our pros and our cons. The Disposable Event Center is the first one up. The pros, I think, are the 50-50 commitment. Financial advisor was even talking about that as being a strength. I was really excited about the synergy between this project and then Olympic College and Western Washington University to have this project be helpful in creating higher education opportunities for our larger community and for Paulsbo specifically. Present there in that area, I think that's fantastic. The fields that are part of the proposal will be used for kids to get out, get connected, and be active. I think all wonderful things that we want for our community. I live in this community, and so we developed Strawberry Field. I drive by Strawberry Field. My kids participate in different events on Strawberry Field on, a couple of times a week, and I see how booked it is. And so I know that there is a need for more space, and I think it's a good way to use our money. And then lastly, the connection with the new hotel is what was just even saying with the conference center drawing in three new hotels to Bremerton was a wonderful thing. And this project's connection with this hotel and providing conference space that can be used by them, I think is very beneficial. The cons doesn't have a feasibility study. I think it's an idea that the city has probably been thinking of, for a while, but all of a sudden had to hit the fast forward button. And so, I think there's more work to be done on the community getting behind it and giving more input and details to the actual project. So I would say that is a con at this point.
I have pros and cons. I thought it was a well-conceived and thought-out project. The city is financially committed. After their presentation, recall we had a number of questions about the presentation, and we got I thought, a very thorough response back from the city saying, Darren asked this question, here's the answer. Bill asked this question, here's the answer. Walt asked this question, here's the answer. I like the potential for the tie-in with OC and Western Washington campus expansions. I like the dollar-for-dollar match for the city of Paulsbo. It's a pretty cheap project to get into for phase 1 and 2 to get to phase 3, but the city's promised a dollar-for-dollar funding match for phase 3. There's already a master plan for the college marketplace, the commercial part of it, even though there's not a feasibility study for this particular project. There's good access from major highways. They already have a hotel commitment, and the city owns most of the land, so land acquisition is not going to turn out to be a hurdle that we have to get over. It should not. On the con side, does the county need another conference center along with Bremerton? And also we're considering a proposed conference center in Port Orchard. So, how many conference centers do we need? This area has healthy growth and business expansion without the PFD assisting. Would our dollars perhaps get bigger payoff in other projects? And sort of short and sweet, does Paulsbo really need the PFD, or are they doing pretty well on their own? Those are my cons.
Thank you.
So as you recall, I looked at these projects with economic development, innovation, community benefit, and my comments. So with regard to economic development, this project builds on an ongoing public facility funded project targeting tourism through the development of soccer fields, and the proposal adds new elements targeting corporate, government, and private events with construction of events and recreation sector. Innovation, the project adds new partners, including Lincoln College and businesses located nearby. The project would strengthen tourism opportunities with the addition of fields that would serve soccer, football, softball, and lacrosse activities. Community benefits. The the addition of an event center would be the major benefit to Paulsville community, which does not presently exist. The project would also stimulate tourism opportunities for the city. I think the major benefit of this project is the continuing the partnership between Paulsville, the North Kitsap School District, and Kitsap County. So the pros are, to me, this builds on what's already going on in Paulsville. And the con, I have a real concern. Paulsville is currently a participant in a project that we funded. And we all know that project has been a problem. And so what makes us believe that they're going to produce on this one? They haven't produced on the last one. Why would we believe that they would produce on a new one? So I think if we did this project, I would want us to have a stronger interlocal agreement with the existing participants of the regional facility there, as well as inclusion with the new partners that they have.
Just a quick note, I didn't think North Kitsap School District was going to be a partner in this one.
Well, when I asked the question of the mayor, she said yes.
Okay, I think I missed that meeting.
Yeah, and so I think that's a question we need to find out. I mean, how many regional event centers do we get involved in with the city of Paulsville and the school district? If something the community wants, then the existing agreement we have is one that we ought to work on. I think that's my opinion.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what the role of the school district would be in this one. Does anyone know?
I've talked to the mayor, the park director, Mayor McCluskey, and they're supporting it kind of like the Port District supporting the racetrack. Yeah, we're just verbally. They have nothing to do with the convention center, so the community convention center.
They
and the
have
agreement we had, the agreement we have on that Paulsville project is primarily with the school district, and they reneged.
Yeah, Paulsville actually stood by that.
Yeah, I think in fairness, the fact that the earlier project has kind of stalled and not gone very far is more at the feet of the school district than it is at the city.
Yeah, the city seemed responsive to us.
Well, I understand that, but let's face it. I mean, that project was presented before my time as a partnership between the city, between the county, and between the school district. It's just as much an issue with the other partners as it is with the school district.
No, it's not. It's totally with the school district.
They have an interlocal agreement. What happened?
I'm telling you, I've been through it, all of it, and then nobody here represented Paulsville when we went through it, and we know who the fault was. So.
You guys? Okay.
So, is the school district going to operate or do any maintenance on this?
Parks.
Parks and Rec.
City Parks will do the maintenance. Okay. So the school district really doesn't have anything in this.
That's right.
Okay.
On my stuff, the pros, I think have been laid out well. I agree with all the pros. I had a couple different things that caused me concern, though. Part of it is another convention center, but I don't really look at this as a convention center. I know the hotel's going up already. Right? It's not tied, it's not creating this hotel. The need is creating this hotel. I was thinking about when we're looking at what we do like for convention centers, how we like them to be able to go to adjacent businesses. And it seems like that location is a little less walkable. It's not really feasible to walk into downtown Paulsville or get out. It's really going to serve the marketplace area. one thing I wasn't crazy about, the dollar for dollar is awesome, but bear in mind that 5,000 to 7,500 square feet of this building is earmarked for Parks and Recreation office. So in reality, quite a bit of that dollar, not quite a bit, but a portion of that dollar to dollar is building them a city office. So I took that kind of out of the equation when I looked at it. And then I agree with how professional it's been put together. It's a well laid out project. That the answer to our questions really answered a lot of stuff for me, and I reviewed it again this afternoon. One of it, though, was asking about, so what are we going to be holding in there? And the list of events in there is very much, it reminded me of Kingston, of what we just saw when we went up there. It's as a strong and community center, but not a regional draw, a local draw for that. So I factored that in too. The third part is, love the college part. There's very low, there's only several hundred students right now. And that was unless anybody read anything different on that, coming out of the classes right there. So it's not where we've got 2,000 students currently and we're going to see 10,000. We're going to see an increase from the 200. We have some strong classes. The cybersecurity is up in there, which is great, and that growth is going to be there. But when I look at the number of students, I'm still looking at a few hundred. So I kind of factored that in a little bit too.
Yeah, I guess in addition to what's already been said, I think it's a little bit disjointed. I'm not sure why the colleges were included. I think if the colleges are to expand, there's land there and they'll fund their own expansions. I am concerned about the facility itself. It seems to me that it has more of a local benefit than it does a regional. And so from the lens of economic development, I'm not really sure I see any. I think it'd be awesome for the city of Paulsbo, and I agree with everything that's been said that's complimentary of the project and the thought that's been put into it, but I'm not so sure that this really meets my criteria as benefiting the county as a whole.
And I kind of have to agree with everybody else, and all the positives are there. Same ones. I'm just not seeing this as a regional draw either. I think it is a North Kitsap draw, maybe a little Central Kitsap. No really out of town, out of county people. So I don't see the economic development side of this that much. That's a great project, but I don't see the economic development part.
All right, moving on to Pendergast.
No.
Oh, sorry, Rick.
I sent the resolutions from the county that created the public facility district, and economic development was not one of the things. I was on the committee for a year, 20-some meetings around the whole county to ask if they thought we should have a public facility district within Kitsap County. And they came up with a whole bunch of, the citizens that came to talk to us, came up with a whole bunch of things that they would like to have that we don't have. We'd have fewer trails by an incredible margin of any county in Puget Sound, and they wanted trails. We have recreation facilities compared to Pierce, any other county. I've coached baseball teams in every county in the peninsula, and we're on the bottom. And you ask about every county, every field in King County, Pierce County have turf on their baseball fields. And that baseball field is used extensively by high school kids. And it's wet in the springtime. Not a good time for baseball. So those are the things that the county created us to do, not economic development. You look at those resolutions. We never had economic development in mind when we did any of the projects on the Kitsap, the fairgrounds. we had in mind to attract people here to use our fields and participate. It's a huge success. Has everybody here been to Kingston to see that community center? Well, that doesn't have any regional attraction. I don't know where that came into standard for any of these projects. It's for the communities that the Public Facility District was created. And the Kingston, it's just phenomenal. Just to go up there and look at it. And it's increased building around there as this Paulsbo Community Center would. It's not a regional event thing. It's just over the $10 million that the statute requires. It was mentioned at our last meeting that some of these projects that we're considering don't have much, I guess the wording was that they're premature because they're not very far along. Well, nobody knew there was going to be extra money or an additional funding source for this public facility district until the legislature added it. So then they started thinking about projects. And I think both Paulsbo and South Kitsap needs to do a feasibility study and a further study on what all they need for that field. And we need to see that feasibility study before we decide if we're going to give them a grant at all. So I think we should plan on, as we've done for the racetrack, we gave them $70,000 to do a feasibility study, which showed that they're going to be awfully successful without any contribution from the facility. But we went ahead and gave them $500,000 to do what needs to be done for these projects, a feasibility study, a planning effort, to find out just what you're talking about. So I would say that we should do that there too. And I would also say that I mentioned before that I thought South Kitsap and North Kitsap should get a big chunk, a larger chunk than Bremerton or Central Kitsap, because they got a lot of money, a lot of that $15 million or so that we had in the first place. And I have gotten some information from Paulsbo's treasurer. Since 2000 and 2018, Paulsbo has paid $56 million, almost $56,900,000 in sales taxes. And they've gotten very little. South Kitsap is bigger with everything they've got out there. I'm sure they paid a lot more than that, and they have gotten nothing. So I hope we will support this project.
Let's move on to the next project. We'll get through two of them tonight, and then we'll do two more. Some of these comments come into making the decision, and I'd rather just get through the pros and cons tonight. Pendergast Park, pros. Again, kids out being active, getting connected with others. Great thing. Economic development through tournaments, bringing in teams from out of our county who come here to play and who stay in hotels, who go to the places to eat, who visit different communities, as we were talking about earlier. Cons, it doesn't seem to me that the facilities have a lot of support from the city, just in their upkeep and kind of the focus on that park from the city to begin with. So it doesn't seem like it has a strong partner as far as financial contribution to me.
I think the pros are They have a plan. In fact, they've had one since 1995. They can likely begin construction very quickly. It's great recreational potential, and probably with the expansion, they could host more regional events. The same thing that's a pro with having the plan is, for me, also a con. Phase 1 has been in place since the mid-90s, and the city has not moved ahead in the last 20 years to work on completing the plan. I don't know if that's an indication of lack of priority within city government for funding until the chance comes up to get some PFD funding. Although Rick thinks it's not important, it has limited commercial economic potential. City funding that they've offered is largely dependent on grants and local fundraising and the real estate excise tax. I didn't see any commitment to bond for money for this project by the city.
Okay, this project proposed to provide rehab funds for a soccer facility built in 1995 and to add a new ball field. The improvements planned will allow for new marketing efforts to increase the use of the facility. Innovation, this project is pretty straightforward in what it proposes. It was originally constructed to bring regional soccer tournaments to the city of Bremerton. The most important part of the project is the involvement of user groups and their funding to support the project. A community benefit, obviously this recreational center is important to the Bremerton community and to Kitsap County. Numerous events occur on the site, and the activities would increase with the city's master plan for the property. This recreational center is worth saving and improving. It has served the community for over 25 years, and will, with its upgrades and improvements, would serve the community for a long time. The problem I have is what happened to it. They fully admitted that they hadn't taken care of it, and so part of the funds that they wanted is for us to rehab the parking facility and create some other opportunities. And I'm not sure what kind of regional impact having a dog park on there would be. So.
Pros, again, we're talking through getting the all-weather turf on. I think one of the cons you just touched on, Bill, was, and we had this conversation about the conference center too, is that the PFD is not set up to do maintenance. And this is deferred maintenance. The buildings are deferred, the restrooms need to be rehabbed, as well as added onto, and the parking lot. And that's not where I see the dollars need to go. I love the idea of new playing fields on it. And we've already proven that we would pay to retrofit on the fairgrounds to go to all-weather turf, but this was built in mid-90s, correct? ADA was a law in 1990. And, so trying to get some of these up to ADA code now is kind of like, well, wait a minute, how come we didn't do it right the first time? But I don't like the rehab part at all, that portion.
Okay, I'll go next. I pretty much have the same pros and cons as everybody else. I mean, it's great, it's ball fields, everybody likes that. What concerns me is the maintenance, of course. I mean, the maintenance on there is not good. I've been up there before, and it's not kept in good shape. Also, the city is really not putting anything into this. That bothers me a little bit too. They pretty much want our money to do all their upgrades and fix the stuff that they haven't fixed in a long time. And another con for me is Bremerton already has a project, a fairly substantial project in the Community Convention Center.
Tom or Rick?
I pretty much agree with everybody. Like I said, they've already got a big chunk of money and they need to take care of it.
Tom, your thoughts?
I don't have anything to add.
All right. With that, we're at past 8:30. We will discuss the Bainbridge Island Parks Aquatic Center next time, as well as the Circuit of the Northwest. And we will have to move our ranking of projects to our second meeting in July. So with that, we will adjourn for tonight.
Can we just go over real quick the schedule of meetings for the summer?
Yes.
Make sure I got the dates right.
I don't have that schedule in front of me. Do you have it, Mike? Yep. So I do know that for July, it's the 15th and the 29th. So it's the third Monday and the fifth Monday. And then every other month, it's the second and the fourth Monday for the next three.
Correct.
So August, September, October, and then I think we only have one scheduled for November.
So we have two in July, 2 in August,
Yes.
2 in September.
Yes, yeah, two in October too, I believe.
Currently only one in October.
Okay.
This is the third revision to the timeline, which extends out through the 2 meetings a month through September. If we don't get it done by then we'll start scheduling 2 a month before.